Well, take care. Okay. Is it 11? It's 11? Yeah.
All right, we will start then. Good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order at, I'm assuming it's 11 o'clock. We do have quorum, although we're still waiting on Wayne. So if there's any declarations of conflict of interest, they can be made now or anytime during the meeting.
Dina, I'm going to declare a conflict right now. When you come to the section where you're discussing who to enter into negotiations with, I've obviously got a big conflict. So I think talking to Kelly, she can just put me on hold for a while.
Okay, and so that's for number 3. Michelle Museum selections. Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. The suggested motion is that the agenda for the June 18th, 2026 Policy and Planning Advisory Committee meeting be adopted as presented. Mover, Paul, seconder. Right, yeah. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Election of chair and vice chair. Suggested motion is that Sally McIntyre be appointed as chair for administrating the election of the chair for the Policy and Planning Advisory Committee for 2026 to 2027. And a mover for that. There's a Clark. Yeah, Clark.
Sorry, I didn't see the second.
Everyone up for him.
Oh,
Okay.
Taylor. Okay.
All in favor? All right, pass it over to you, Sally.
Okay. The election will be carried out in accordance with procedures set out in MVCA's administrative bylaw. The elections will be conducted in the order of chair, followed by vice chair. I'm declaring the positions of chair and vice chair vacant. And I'm going to ask for nominations for the position of chair 3 times. So I'm requesting a nomination for the position of chair.
Can I nominate?
Yes. Yep. So Dana has nominated Bev as chair. I'm going to request again any nominations for the position of chair. Any nominations for the position of chair? Okay, so I'm moving that resolve that the nomination for the position of chair be closed. Can somebody move that?
Jim Casper accepts.
Well, in our order, I asked her once it's confirmed that Opie's the only person. Okay, so Paul moves. Can I have a seconder to close the nominations? Dana? Okay, and then Beth, do you accept the nomination of chair?
I do. I do.
Thank you, Beth. So I now declare Beth Holmes as chair by acclamation. I now hand it to you to do vice chair.
Okay.
No, to Beth, but to you. Oh, this is awkward. Do you want me to stay?
I think you need to stay, Sally.
Sorry, that is awkward. Okay, I will continue now. So I will open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair. Can I have a nomination for vice chair? Yes, Beth.
I nominate Dina.
Thank you very much. Asking a second time, are there any further nominations for the position of vice chair? And the third time, any nominations for the position of vice chair? Okay. So I am, the motion is resolved that the nominations for the position of vice chair be closed. Can I have somebody move that? Roy, a second. Bev? So Dana, would you accept the position of vice chair?
I do.
Thank you. So I declare Dana as the vice chair by acclamation. So over to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Continue the meeting. The approval of the minutes. Resolved that the minutes of the Policy and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held February 5th, 2026 be received and approved as printed. Can I get a motion for that? All. Bev? Any discussion on the minutes as presented? Glenn, you have your hand up.
I put my hand up to second or move, and
Okay.
Zoom
No problem.
Zoom automatically raised it. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Great. Okay, now on to the topic of the day. The Milliken Tail Museum Collections and Operations. I'm gonna put that, are you waiting now? Yeah, we're talking about it now. See you back, I'll bring you back in. So the report was circulated. Scott, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. So just a quick heads up, I kind of share some of the sentiments for today. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so do my best to be as clear and concise on this as I can. So as you'll remember at the last PMP meeting, we came with an update on all the work that the working group and staff had done to that point. Subsequently after that, after many conversations, became evident that we needed a open and transparent process to be able to guide us through, making the correct decision when it came to potential ownership change with the museum. So with that, on February 24th, staff issued an REOI to look for interest in the community and really outside the community, the greater interest in the process, to which we got 5 respondents back. So the Canada's first basketball court. We got the Canadian Museum of History, Library and Archives Canada, the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum, and the North Atlantic Historical Society. And that was out of the REOI. So then we held a special meeting of the board on March 30th to address some questions raised during the REOI process. So we asked the board at that point to approve the scope of the RFP, direct members of the working group with potential conflicts to step down. And we also asked them to direct staff to include an allocation of land in the RFP for a potential new museum facility that was requested by North Lanark at the time. So after that, the RFP was issued on April 17th, and we ended up with 4 respondents in terms of submissions. So we had, again, Canada's first basketball court, we had the Canadian Museum of History, the Textile Museum, and then the municipality of Mississippi Mills. So in order to evaluate the proposals, staff along with the working group came up with, again, the criteria for evaluation, which is on your screen there. So it was broken down into 3 main categories: protecting the collection and the legacies, supporting local heritage and economic development, and then compliance and risk management. So again, there's 13 criteria that were kind of evaluated each proposal by. And what I'm going to do is I'll take you through the 4 proposals, kind of the high level of what their proposals included, and some of the things that were pointed out by both staff and the working group. So first is the world's oldest basketball court, or Canada's first basketball court. It's essentially the same thing. So it's located out in New Brunswick. It's as it says, so it's the oldest basketball court in the world. They are not for profit. They've been 13 years in operation. They do have an application in process to become a registered charity. They were interested only in the Naismith collection. They're also put into their proposal that they were open to sharing items with other organizations. And a big thing, they're looking to showcase collections as part of a concept of a facility that celebrates Canadian basketball. So I think, as we all know, I think Naismith probably doesn't get the credit he deserves within the country of Canada. This would be something that is really dedicated to celebrating, the Canadian side of basketball, which we don't really have right now. So they included a concept drawing of their facility, which it's a really neat concept, and we do hope that it does move forward, because it is a great initiative. So some of the feedback that we came up with, there was a concern that it only involved the Naismith collection. So again, part of feedback was we were trying to keep the collections together. There was concern over the possible removal from the site. As I talked about, their proposed facility is not yet constructed, and again, it may or may not come to fruition. So to that point, they don't have a proper storage facility in place. So there's a risk in the short term to the collection that they wouldn't have a proper place to store it. On the positive side, there is a great opportunity for future partnerships. And again, it's a genuine interest in preserving and promotion of the Naismith story to promote Canadian basketball. That was Canada's first basketball court. Second was Canadian Museum of History, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, located in Gatineau. It's actually the largest collector of sport in the country. They were interested in 14 of the Mackenzie objects and 77 of the Naismith, and they had no interest on actual on-site management. So again, it brought up they were only interested in certain parts of the collection, which could make divestment of the other pieces a little tougher. Collection would leave the site again. It was flagged although they are in a fairly stable financial environment right now. You never know what's coming with federal budget cuts. Again, sorry, that last piece is a carryover from the first slide. So the financial stability and museum expertise, I mean, they would be second to none in terms of caring for the collection and caring for the artifacts. And again, it does open up future partnership opportunities as well. So the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum, again, I'm sure most of you are fairly familiar with it. If you're not, it is located in Elmont, 40 plus years of operation. They're interested in all elements of both collections. And their RFPs actually did make a note that they were interested in ownership of the museum building and potentially in future the actual gatehouse itself as well. Contained the plan to operate on site at the Milliken Tail. The short-term plan was that the Textile Museum would take over largely in a similar state to what it is now. And the long-term plan sees it being incorporated under the umbrella of Mississippi Mills Museums, which will incorporate the Milliken Tail, the Textile Museum, and North Lanark. And they had a fairly aggressive timeline of January 2027 for a transfer. Again, later in their proposal, they did note it wasn't a deal breaker, but that's kind of what they were targeting. So feedback on the Textile Museum, there was a potential burden of 2 sites of operation, so both from a staffing perspective and a financial perspective. They did ask for ownership outside of the actual collection, which was not in the scope of the RFP and was never really addressed with the board. The 2027 ownership transfer would be too aggressive of a timeline based on all the work we would have to do to put everything together to properly transfer this collection to a new owner. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker for them, but it was noted. They are, on the positive side, interested in all the objects from both collections. They do have a strong track record of securing grants. They've secured numerous grants over the past 18 years. I believe in the area of 1.5 million. Similarly, it's backed up with 600,000 in donations in the last 18 years. So that a strong track record in being able to drive revenue and raise those funds. Again, it does come with a strong pool of staff talent, staff expertise. And it is a step towards bringing the 3 Mississippi Mills museums under one umbrella, which is something that even us as the organization running the mill that we're in now, that we have relayed to the other 2 museums is trying to work together and not fighting over the same resources and the same events and stuff like that. So this would be a big step into kind of bridging those gaps. And the last one was the municipality themselves. So Mississippi Mills did enter the RFP process. Again, the local municipality in this case, interested in all elements of both collections, would go with on-site operation at the Milliken Tail. The transfer timeline was January 2028, which again is sooner than the MOUs expire, but does leave a bit more runway for us to be able to get things in order. And it was accompanied by various letters of support from the local community. So they got letters of support from the County of Lanark, the Town of Carleton Place, Township of Beckwith, many other volunteers and organizations around the area. And it kind of goes to, I guess, the community support behind, Mississippi Mills being possibly the successful proponent of this process. So, feedback from staff and from the working group, there was a lack of reference to a board or advisory board, which is required for funding. So as we'll talk about when we get into the next step of this, our CMOG grant would have to be administered through an actual advisory board. So, and council can't act as that advisory board. Doesn't mean they can't set it up. There was just no reference to it in their RFP. Any long-term plans would be subject to future municipal council. So while there's support now, the hope it would be that it would continue, but again, that would be somewhat of an unknown. Again, the on-site operation at the mill, and again, another step towards bringing all three museums under the same umbrella. So they did have, one of the letters of support they had was from the North Lanark Museum, the North Lanark Historical Society. So again, it's probably another step into bringing those museums into a better working relationship. The financial stability that comes along with the municipality, and its demonstration of commitment to the preservation of both collections, which these are both, the local gentlemen. It's a big story for the municipality that, they come from that area, and it's something really for them to champion. So there was a demonstration to that commitment from their end. So again, we go on to, from the recommendation side of things, and this is coming from staff and the discussion with the working group. So a majority of the working group was behind this recommendation of the municipality being a successful proponent to the RFP process. So again, as we talked about, the numerous letters of support from the local community. It gives us the best long-term predictable funding in this situation. Step towards cohesion amongst the local museums. It allows probably the best opportunity to keep the on-site operations going at the Mill of Kintail. It's a demonstration to commitment to the preservation of both collections, as we talked about. A proven partner of MVCA, and something that we can build on that relationship. And it also allows for the possible involvement of other parties. So I think in this situation with the municipality, there are other players that were involved in the RFP process that can be part of the long-term vision for this museum that might not be part of it if the municipality wasn't the successful proponent. So with that, it's a bit of a remaining timeline that we put together. So obviously June 18th is where we sit now. We have sent the updated draft strategy for consultation with both the Mill of Kintail Advisory Committee and the Mississippi Mills. So June 30th is the traditional CMOG deadline. Our goal is to submit all of the material, including the draft plan to CMOG by that deadline. Although we have secured an extension until the end of July for us to be able to submit, we figured the best course of action right now is to get everything in by the original deadline, as well as the draft plan. Have the draft plan go to the board for July 13th, after which we would have till July 30th, which was the approved extension to be able to submit the draft approved plan. And from August 2026 to December 2027 is continued museum operations, as well as we're working on the transfer and the lease prep to be able to properly transfer the collection and have a lease organized. And that also, so that includes going out to OPCA now to be able to get their stamp on, as well as the province, as a lease would exceed the 5-year limitation that's set by the province now. And then as of January 2028, we'd like to see hopefully an official transfer of ownership to Mississippi Mills. And that would be kind of the end goal of where our timeline sits right now. So with that, if anybody has any questions or any feedback.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions? I have one. Can you kind of touch on what you mean by uncertain legal position with the collection residing on site but without ownership?
Yeah, so with certain portions of the collection, the way that they were brought into our care, in some of the instances, it's unclear how it was brought into our care. So in some portions of the collection, it's very clear, the accession records are there. We can point at it and say, this is how we got it. And then we have certain pieces that were kind of just, here it is, you know, as part of the collection, and we need to go through and try and tighten up some of those records to see how far back we can properly track how they came into our care.
So why is it a concern for Mississippi Mills, but not listed as a concern for the other entities?
Actually, okay,
It's other risks to MVCA.
yeah, so under Mississippi Mills, it should, that one under long-term plan. So the second part of that statement, future defunding would place MVCA as an uncertain legal position, that would also apply to the textile museum. The issue being, if we have a tenant who's operating museum, and for whatever reason that tenant is no longer able to, the collection is on our property, but some other organization owns it. So what responsibility do we have, would we have on a go-forward basis for that collection? Because if you look at this current situation where we have a collection on our property, our funding mechanisms have changed. We're trying to extract our fiduciary responsibility over that collection. But should the funding of that future organization change, what position are we in? It sits on our property. That is the embedded risk of retaining the collection on that property. It doesn't matter who the tenant is and who occupies and runs that site going forward. At the end of the day, the collection will be on our property, and if anything happens, people will look to us, MVCA, to resolve the issue. So it is the one key and drawback from a risk management perspective of retaining the collections on site. You'll never lose the public perception that you are accountable for the management of that collection. That's what that statement's trying to say, and you're correct. Should it also say the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum if it did? There's a question.
Glenn?
Yeah, thank you. First a comment. Thank you to staff for putting together this report and for managing this whole process. If the negotiations are successful with your recommended proponent, that's a huge win. I'm thinking of where we were at just a few years ago with a lot of uncertainty. So I'm glad you had 4 proponents submit bids, and I think, yeah, they're all interesting bids, and I think you made the right decision. I'm just wondering if staff could speak a little bit to any risk from amalgamation. There is a note about timing risk with one of the submissions received, but beyond that, are there any other concerns that you have about how the CA amalgamation might affect the negotiations and any final stages in this?
So the first challenge is the hurdle that Scott mentioned, which is decisions like this will need to go through OPCA. So if we want to divest of the collection, it's an asset, it's worth millions of dollars, and that will have to go through the OPCA. I don't anticipate that necessarily being an impediment because the consequences of them saying no are significant, and I don't think they'll say no. In terms of then, Scott also mentioned the lease agreement. So if we want to negotiate that, again, the legislation or the regs changed some time ago that said the minister has to sign off on anything over 5 years. So it was going to have to go to the minister anyway. If there's political will, again, I don't see the OPCA necessarily putting up a barrier to this. As to the long-term operations and management, once all that is in place and the museum's operating and amalgamation is or has occurred, I don't see why it should change. In that other CAs within our the greater St. Lawrence future region have tenant agreements operating on their sites for various purposes, and it's a common practice across Ontario. So the model has ample precedent, And we haven't heard of this becoming an issue at other sites where a satisfactory lease agreement has been put in place.
Okay, thanks for that, Sally. Appreciate it. So there are risks. You're monitoring them, but nothing significant that could, at this point, derail the process. That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? No? All right, I will put out the suggested motion. So it's that the Policy and Planning Advisory Committee recommend that the Board of Directors direct staff to commence negotiations with the municipality of Mississippi Mills to assume ownership of the museum collections and operation of the Mill of Kintail Museum in accordance with the RFP and the municipality's submission. Can I get a mover for that? Wayne? Glenn? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Great.
That's it, that passes. Oh, we have one more thing on.
Yes.
An update on the strategic plan for the mill.
I assume that's from vote. Okay. No, like he's every time he waves to vote, it automatically puts his hand up. So, yeah, so Zoom noted automatically.
Okay. So I've already briefly touched on in the last piece of just a discussion on the updated strategic plan that's due as part of our CMOG submission this year. So each year, eligible participants for the CMOG grant, which is the Community Museum Operating Grant, are required to submit material for evaluation and essentially to keep up with the standards of running a museum in Ontario. So this year's project is an update to the strategic plan. So the last update was done in 2019. So originally the deadline was June 30th. We did get an extension to the end of July, but as I said, we're hoping to get as much as possible submitted for the original deadline as possible. So so part of the requirements of the plan is to include a mission, vision, and mandate, summary of the planning process of who was consulted, how did you come up with the priorities and the goals and the action items and a plan to be able to achieve them. So for us, as part of the process, it actually started with third-party evaluation. Some of you may remember, so Fozzie Moore was a retired civil servant that had a background in program evaluation. And she actually donated a good amount of her time to be able to evaluate the previous strategic plan and pass along some of her recommendations from that evaluation. We've also incorporated elements of the Canadian Conservation Institute report that we got last year, and they came through and did an evaluation of our collections in our facility. So to help inform the capital plan, we had a building condition assessments done both on the gatehouse and the museum early this year. And as mentioned, we have sent it out for consultation with the Museum Advisory Committee as well as Mississippi Mills. So we have kind of two separate phases and goals associated with both phases. So we have the pre-transfer, which talks about, again, obviously leading up to the transfer. So continuing to highlight the shared interest in nature and promotion of the health benefits of physical activity and conservation land. So trying to, again, tie the museum back to more of the mandate of the authority. Tell the local story. So again, it's a big community interest piece, and it was the big kind of feedback from the community is how important these guys are to not only the local community, but also, you know, being the national figures that they are, is continuing to tell that story. Another big focus that we want to do is integrate the history and involvement of MVCA in the museum, in the property, and really tell that piece of how, you know, we've been the stewards of this collection for 50+ years now. And then obviously another big piece is support and facilitate a successful transfer, with the municipality. And then post-transfer, Again, we're looking to maintain and celebrate the historical involvement of MVCA in the stewardship of the museum, collaborate in planning and promotion of the conservation area, and then leverage some of the relationships that we've gained over this RFP process with the other museums to enhance exposure of the collections in the museum on a national and international scale. So I think all of the people that have replied to the RFP and expressed interest would be great partners in being able to get more exposure to the museum. And it's also some of the people within the working group who were valuable, members of the working group at that time, will also be good resources in this sense. So it's a lot of positives that we've gotten out of this process. So there were a list of key objectives, and these are kind of the ones that I've kind of pulled from. So the accession record update, which I misunderstood the question you were asking before, but this is a big focus and be able to get us in the proper spot to be able to transfer the collection, is going through and making sure that we can tie up all the records that we have with our collection. Integrating the story of MVCA's involvement, fostering the relationship with the other facilities, so even more so on the local level. Negotiate and facilitate the successful transfer. And then another big one will be integrating the museum into the upcoming site master plan update. So some key action items. Again, there was a list of a whole bunch of action items, and I tried to break them down into the main categories that we're really trying to focus on. So ensuring the collection documentation is set for transfer. There are certain maintenance needs that we do have to do to that building to be able to properly turn it over. So the RFP did speak to an as-is condition, but there are a couple small things that we do need to address to turn that building over to a leasee in proper working condition. Again, it talks about fostering relationships with other facilities, which is another key piece that's come out of this. Museum operations. So we still have a museum to run for at least the next year and a half. And the last thing we would like to do is just wipe our hands of it at this point. We still want to continue the good work we've done in the last 3 or 4 years in terms of our collections management and our marketing and the exhibits and everything we've tried to do to increase the exposure of the collection. We still want to build on all of that, so when we turn it over, it's still in great shape and it's still getting the visitation numbers that it should be getting. We want to preserve the history of the Milliken Tail. So something we've been discussing internally as staff is creating somewhat of an exhibit in the gatehouse itself that kind of maps out the history of the property and how it came to be where it is now. So if we're looking at a 3 or 4 panel display, we would have a Mackenzie panel of how he took it over in 1930. And then how the Lees purchased the property in 1952, and they stewarded not only the property, the collection, until it got to MVCA ownership in 1972. And then it kind of how it's progressed from there. It'd be a really good story to tell in the gatehouse and to be able to preserve, our legacy as being the stewards of that collection again for 50 plus years. And it also involves a capital plan, which again was largely influenced by the building condition assessment that we did on the museum. And a quick note on the capital plan and some of the numbers that are featured in the strategic plan update. So the cost share with the new tenant as part of the lease is factored into what they would be paying in rent is factored into the plan, the capital plan as well on that revenue share, on that cost share. So there are a couple items that are factored in there and were pointed out, and it's a 5-year window that we're looking at in terms of the capital needs that would be associated with that building. A lot of the heavy lifting on the capital was done prior to this strategic plan update. So we did the new roof a couple of years ago, pointing, and a lot of the major capital work. So the building itself is in very good condition, especially for its age. But there are a couple things that were pointed out that we will need to take into account moving forward. So in terms of next steps, we are, as I've discussed, we are seeking input from both the Museum Advisory Committee and the municipality. We are planning to submit the draft plan before the June 30th deadline. We will seek an approval on the updated strategic plan from the Board of Directors at the July 13th meeting, and then we will submit the board approved plan as a final update to CMOG following that before our July deadline. So with that, Anybody has any questions?
Questions or comments on the plan update? We need a motion to receive information. So that was for information and we'll see it again at the board meeting, I guess. And that's it, unless anyone has any new business, we are at adjournment. To be resolved that the Policy and Planning Advisory Committee be adjourned, whatever time it is. 11:30. We have a motion for that. Yep. All in favor? Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. That's it.
Are we supposed to tell him?
Shoot.
Yeah, I know.